Hi, and welcome to the weekly predictions based on astrology for the week of February 22, 2021. In terms of the stock market direction, I think the market will go up overall for the week, but is not going to necessarily go up a lot. Monday looks like an up day to me. So does Tuesday, and I think Wednesday is the only day where market may slightly turn to down and then turn back up to obviously up on Thursday and then Friday. And in terms of the important sort of events to note for each day of the week, I think the entire week, pretty much 22nd through the 25th of February, you may see news, or rather certain areas will be featured more prominently in the news. And those include all of the Uranian, Aquarian sort of subjects. So those would be something like IT, telecoms, electric cars, electric power, and of course the space exploration, airlines, electric batteries, power plants, etc. Anything that's like high-tech gadgets of any sorts and so forth. And also there will be increased focus on anything that has to do with finance, but again with focus on things that are like innovative, digital, like some sort of online banking, etc., or cryptocurrencies and things of that nature. And the news specifically may focus on either like a sale or acquisition, say of a business or branch, for example, or implementation of innovative features, specifically again on finance, for example, or again of innovation for a power plant, for example, or airline, etc., and or just in general kind of some sort of innovation that's a technological innovation in one of those industries. And let's see. And if there was a disagreement, for example, if there was a pending like a negotiation that involves a sale, for example, or an acquisition of a business in those areas, or if maybe there was a project that there was a decision being made whether or not to invest to implement a particular new sort of technology, and if last week there may have been, for example, concerns about the value of a business or the cost associated with implementing maybe a new approach, then this week this sort of decision is more likely to be made. And if indeed the investment is made, like the funding is granted, etc., then indeed this would be a very successful project or innovation or implementation of that feature would be successful long term, and specifically because it will receive support of the government and or of the large established corporations. So it will be a good time to, I guess, if there's a negotiation of such around something like that, then I would say this would be a good time to actually go for it because it will be successful long term. Also, the February 22nd through 28th period may see increased news about sports events or athletes, and especially focus on something that's like long distance or requires a lot of endurance. So maybe like a marathon or something like that, or if there is like a game or fight or something like that, it may go on like for a really long time, and it may feature an athlete or somebody or a team who will succeed by reaching like a new sort of break, I guess, some sort of existing reach further than before, or go further than before, or last longer, or some sort of record may be broken, and like one opponent outlasts another opponent, and again this is something that maybe is unusual in some way, or again breaks some sort of a record. Let's see. And in terms of events for the US, and this could relate to US financial sort of area, or finance, banks, financial institutions, financial policies, as well as price of gold and silver. For February 22nd, which is Monday, there may be some news or some focus on financial policies or currency value or something like that out of the US. And related to that, there might be a slight up move in the value of gold and or silver. And for the US, also Monday seems to be a day where, again, there may be increased news about either some sale or acquisition, and it can involve specifically a company that's in the communication or transportation or retail sales, and something like a car manufacturing, for example, or like, you know, some online store. And again, there might be positive news for a business in one of those areas, such as their value may go up, or they may report like improved profits. For China, 22nd and 23rd of February seem to be important in the sense that there might be increased news about like the stock values, rather stock market and investments. There might be some increased activity there. So maybe some announcements of more deals, more sales, more, you know, agreements or negotiations. So something buy and sell, like that activity may increase. And the nature of the news will likely be positive, where maybe some deals are successful, so more successful deals are reached, or, you know, the travel has increased, or there are more investments that are made, and again, especially in the communication and transportation businesses. Then, as I mentioned, Monday, Tuesday likely will be up days, Wednesday down, Thursday, Friday up again, and towards the end of the week, we will again, for US and also for gold and silver prices, there may be again focus on either US financial policies as well as on the price of gold and silver. And the 25th and 26th of February, so we're talking Thursday, Friday, may actually now see a downturn for gold and possibly also silver, and that again may be related to some either news or expectations out of the US about, again, the value of currency or some policies, fiscal policies. And also separately, just for the US, 25th and 26th may see it again increased news about communication, transportation businesses, and also retail sales. And again, the news could be focusing on something like acquisition of a business, just how the sales are doing, and at that time, the news may be somewhat more stressful. Maybe there are arguments, like if there's a negotiation going on, things may not be going so well because there is like an argument or some miscommunication about the details of the deal. And there may be some accusations by one party to another that maybe one party is not following the protocols correctly, like they're missing some details and things need to be done like so on this schedule, and really they're not being, you know, another party is being accused that they're not following the schedule, something along those lines. So like nitpicking, so to speak, or some disagreements may specifically focus on details. Either, again, parts are missing, information is missing, and again, schedule does not follow, something is not delivered on time. For example, there could be also like an agreement is missing some details, or an announcement is made on, say, social media about an agreement that's pending, but it contains some misinformation, or there's a written agreement, but again, somebody forgot to include some important details. Or again, some details, say it's about, as I mentioned, communication, transportation businesses, maybe it's, you know, car manufacturer, and some details about how powerful the car engine is are misrepresented. So something like that. And that's Thursday, Friday, and that's for the US. Let's see, then for sort of upcoming weekend, Saturday, Sunday, the 27th and 28th, for the US, there may be some positive news related to like earnings and improved sort of funding or increased source of, I guess, earnings for areas related to healthcare, I guess veterinary care, as well as like government services and contracts. So any sort of supportive services such as like postal service, teachers, police, etc. For those areas, there might be positive news where, again, more funding becomes available, or somehow there's some support from the government for those areas, as well as for healthcare workers. And then for Sunday specifically, and I guess into early next week, into early March, that's globally, we will start, or rather the news may turn kind of a little more positive or more optimistic, especially for communication, transportation industries, as well as, again, IT, aerospace, airlines, electric cars, power plants. So there may be some either hopeful news or some positive expectations, and about, again, either that some new technologies are being implemented, or that there's some positive developments like increased earnings by communication, transportation businesses, and or that the laws are about to be passed or will have been passed by then that specifically affect travel. So maybe something that's helpful for electric cars, or helps to travelers who travel long distances. So maybe now more the travel has become somehow like more destinations are available, or there are more modes of transportation, or for some reason it becomes easier to travel, or again certain destinations become more available, or groups that were not able to travel, or certain products that perhaps couldn't have been shipped before, now those groups can travel and those products can be shipped. So basically some sort of improvement, and it also benefits any sort of retailers who are specifically involved in like shipping things, like online retailers, etc. So again, things kind of, there's some sort of uptick in activity, whether more people are traveling or more products are shipped, or there are literally laws passed that maybe it's easier for people to immigrate, or easier to move basically goods and people across long distances. And this hopeful mood will begin with some announcements or some expectations on the 28th, and it will continue into early March through about, I'd say, March 5th, but especially kind of hopeful news or hopeful mood may persist on March 1st and 2nd, which is like next Monday, Tuesday. And so obviously this may be, I would say, probably looking good for next week in terms of like for those businesses, and maybe even overall market mood, I guess. So in terms of like more removed, I guess, upcoming sort of transits. So for China, early to mid-March of this year, may see some increased news about like power plays with partnerships. So maybe China is, the one who's maybe playing some games and making, other partners feel like they're under pressure, or vice versa. It could be on the receiving end of such activities by other partners. And there may be some disagreements about like legality of something, or some secretive activities. So maybe one party is accusing the other of like data breaching, breaching the data, hacking, or doing something, underhanded or underhandedly. And also out of China, again, early to mid-March, there may be increased focus on activities that basically involve expansion of military, and or some activities that involve nuclear power or recycling capabilities. For both globally and for the US, the months of April, August, and December of 2021 look significant, where there may be increased focus on the value of US dollar and gold prices, as well as silver. And the key dates, I would say, would be around April 17, August 9, and December 15th, and possibly March 26. I'm not as sure about the March date. But these basically will be the dates where there may be some increased news about fiscal policies out of the US, or some news about the US dollar value changing. And those also might be the dates where there may be more significant changes, reversals in the value of gold and possibly also silver. And now on to like general kind of background influences, which will be with us, for some time. Usually these like are correlated with slowly moving planetary transits, and some last, months, some last a few weeks. So the major one that obviously many astrologers have been talking about is the Saturn-Uranus square, which will be with us throughout, say, November of 2022. And there are multiple times throughout 21 and 22, where those two planets become kind of square each other a little bit more precisely. And on some occasions we also will have Mars kind of coming into play, which will make things even more intense. As a general background, I guess this would be representative, this aspect would be representative of the like ideological clashes, in my opinion, where, you know, one, either group of people or even within the same person, one can be thinking like this versus that, or I really want this, but at the same time, how can I have, you know, this where, you know, something else is missing, or basically some sort of a conflict between specifically like Uranian energies, which will be like wanting freedom, wanting things to be equal, and basically everybody should have what they need and nobody should be, you know, prevented from having what they really need. And Uranus also wants things really quickly without really any delays. And at the same time, we have the square to Saturn, and Saturn represents things like, okay, but what about how things used to be and how things, you know, should proceed carefully and slowly, because if we rush too fast and don't implement proper checks, things may break, basically. So between, you know, this kind of more of a open, free, and fast-moving, innovative kind of approach, and approach that says, okay, we need to proceed slowly, best to preserve status quo, not rush into new things, and if we must implement new things, we have to be triple and quadruple checking everything, and things then drag on forever to the point where, you know, you have missed the innovation, and basically things are already expired. So obviously because of square, there's this tension. So on the one hand, this may lead to things breaking down, conflicts, and accidents, bad weather, and, you know, shakeups of various sorts. On the other hand, through those shakeups and accidents, things may actually be developed that will be beneficial, such as, again, some flaw is discovered and then it's fixed. And so there's innovation, but first, obviously, there has to be a flaw and maybe some things go wrong before they're fixed. So that's the nature of the square aspect. And of course, interestingly, that last week we had this square being fairly precise, or exact rather. And indeed, on two occasions on Saturday, there were two different incidents involving Boeing airline, where basically planes had lost some parts and parts that fell on the ground and did some damage and hurt some people. And basically this was in US and then in Netherlands. And because of these transits, again, this precise square between Saturn and Uranus are going to repeat. And in fact, this time period, I'd say, would the influence last through about March 5th. And then there will be another one coming up June 3rd through 25th. And especially, I guess, strong one, difficult one, June 29th through July 9th. And some other ones. And you can check those out on my blog at vlastunka.com. But basically, what I'm saying is that things that have occurred under this more precise square, they will likely repeat when square between Uranus and Saturn will become more precise again throughout this, 2-year period, this year and next year. And especially, I would be particularly concerned around the period of 29th of June through July 9th, because at that time we will have Mars participating, so to speak, in this transit, and Mars will make things kind of potentially, take turn for the worse, because it's kind of impatient and will bring things like, fire, explosions, and anger into play. So if you just have this ideological clash sort of between Uranus and Saturn in theory, and or this preview of what might happen, like we had planes lose parts, but luckily they safely were able to land. When Mars joins the square, unfortunately, things may go sort of, basically there might be another accident involving airline, and since we have Boeing, it will likely be Boeing again, and since we have specifically certain locations like Colorado, I believe in the US, and Netherlands, those same countries may again be involved during the upcoming transit between Saturn and Uranus, because chances are these countries or those locations and this particular airline are sensitive, or rather this plane manufacturer are sensitive to those particular transits. And it is interesting because I did mention previously where under similar difficult transit involving Mars, Uranus, and Saturn, there was a really large fireworks explosion, disaster basically in the Dutch city of Enschede. And this particular, fairly, I'd say, relatively minor incident, again involving airline, occurred also over Netherlands. So definitely, I would say avoid, maybe if you can, traveling under difficult transits between Saturn and Uranus, especially when Mars joins in at the end of June through early July. Let's see. And other events that may occur under Saturn and Uranus square will be more, like I said, incidents that involve anything that has to do like with electric power. And we had, of course, this ice storm in Texas with, power grid being affected. So anything that's electric, airspace, airlines, even social media, anything that's like involving networks, distributed architecture, so maybe a cloud provider going down or something like that. So all of that is definitely possible under Saturn and Uranus square, and especially, I would say, end of June to early July might be more difficult period, relatively speaking. And that sort of is in part why I predicted back already months ago on my blog at telsunko.com that from December through February of this year, we may expect increased difficulties for corporations that specifically are in the areas like of IT, telecommunications, electric power, social networks, aerospace, etc. And that those companies may experience a lot of restructuring, or there may be service outages, and the outages may be due to, again, either restructuring or some troubles, like maybe, company declaring bankruptcy or something like that, or due to turbulent weather. And I specifically mentioned winds, electric storms, and ice storms, and or increased seismic activity. And as I mentioned, in Texas in particular, but also in other parts of the US, there were major winter storms, which of course then unfortunately resulted in major power outages. So under upcoming precise Saturn-Uranus square, we may also experience those in, again, certain periods of this year. And you can look those up by yourself, or you can visit my blog at telsunko.com and just read those dates that I mentioned in my weekly blog. For the US, the period of January, at the end of January through early March, and this week, particularly the 22nd and then 25th and 26th of February are significant. There may be, again, important announcements or focus on areas related to airspace, electric cars, IT, and all of that, like as I mentioned, basically Uranian type of areas, but also cryptocurrencies, financial institutions, financial policies, etc. But there may also be some important news about prominent persons such as politicians, CEOs, actors, etc. And the news may involve their wealth, their health, their freedom, or their taxes, and there may be some sudden changes in their status. Maybe they're like they were wealthy and suddenly they lose their wealth, or they were considered to be like the healthy, famous person, and suddenly they get really sick, and this happens fairly quickly and unexpectedly. Or perhaps again they're like expelled from some organization. They even may lose their health or lose some rights for some reason, and that could be due to some previous activities where they were irresponsible somehow, or engaged in some financial speculation, maybe cause some volatility of, say, currency, or their activities led to a large financial loss, basically, and so that may trigger some backlash and stronger regulations, and again, they may lose their status or power or freedom even over that. And that's for the US through about early March of this year. For China, early February to mid-March is also significant. And this week, particularly 22nd and 28th of February are significant. And that's because there we may see increased focus in the news on like powerful alliances, leadership, and there may be some announcements of new projects or expanding like the military strength or capabilities involving airlines, IT, telecommunications, AI, anything that's like new and innovative and digital. And there may be these potentially new projects either announced or being planned. And again, this could be enhancing military, but related to like communications, transportation, something digital, or it could be enhancing capabilities again of military, but related to, say, Navy, chemicals, water. So some of these projects may be sort of ongoing or in the works, so to speak, or they may be announced through like mid-March, but associated with that, there may be also change in some leadership. So for example, if there's a new project or a new development, a new leader may need to be appointed to sort of oversee that, or there may be internal, reshuffling to basically appoint different leaders because, again, of some changes in those projects, because maybe some innovative features being implemented and somebody with, more specific skills needs to oversee that. And again, this may also be either something that China does, on their own, or it could be in partnership with another like powerful ally. Let's see, and for oil, as well as other Neptunian areas such as gas, chemicals, also wet weather, Navy, anything that has to do with water and liquids, as well as infectious diseases that may be, especially thrive in wet, moist environments. There might be increased focus on such things in the news through February of this year. And there might be some potentially surprising or unexpected news that ranging from just increased focus on those areas, but also on even some accidents like a spike in infectious disease or spill of oil or gas leak. And the focus on such events will also increase at other times of the year, and particularly in April and in September, and especially sometime between 8th and 11th of April, and then early September 1st through 3rd, there may be some increased focus on, again, either, say, price of oil and maybe some arguments or some events that maybe are, again, maritime disaster of some sort or oil spill, or just arguments about, the price of oil among, say, manufacturers, or arguments over transportation of oil. And the spikes, again, would be, let's say, early April and early September for that. But there are other times of this year, and I did basically list them up for 2021 in my blog at lasunka.com. And also I did highlight a couple dates in the 2022 and 2025 that I think will be significant, specifically for those areas, and especially for, say, oil prices as well as gas. And you can just check out those dates on my blog, but just to mention that in 2022 we will have actually Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces, which will be definitely very strong focus on oil at that time. And not just oil, but again, this could be a major oil spill, for example, but it may affect, obviously a company that is responsible. So they may have to, for example, come and engage in a lot of cleanup, or there may be just oil glut to the point where, again, there's so much oil and there's so many, so much floating storage, and this could lead again to change in oil prices. I would imagine that they would go down because of the oil glut, but also this could lead or increase rather the risk of something going wrong, something leaking, be it due to corrosion, due to foggy or excessively like wet weather, some storms, rains, etc. may capsize, say, a ship, for example. And in 2022, the strongest period of such influence, again focus on oil but also related events, would be April 4th through the 12th, but I would say the entire period of March through May of next year, which is spring, may see significant activities related to either oil, gas, water, floods, but also maritime disasters, oil spills, excessive sort of availability of the oil, surplus of oil, increasing number of floating oil storage, etc. And then in 2025, there may be really major turning point for the oil prices, as well as other related peak in other related activities. So increased news about anything that maybe swims or is dives. So, and especially related to either weapons or things that need to happen really quickly, meaning because of the Neptune's ingress into Aries, basically, and Aries is associated with either sports, fast movements, as well as weapons, and of course it's a fire sign, so drought. So in 2025, suddenly there may be really big changes, again in the oil prices, but also there could be increase in sort of news or companies that are focused on different usage of oil and chemicals, gas, etc. So maybe increased news in the areas are related to Aries. So this could be again weapons, this could be sports, increased maybe focus on things that are like submarines, bioweapons, but also water pollution, maybe even water drought, shortage of clean water, infectious diseases that are kind of involving this both heat and sort of moisture, so like cholera or something like that. Those all may peak at that time, and also at that time we will have Saturn conjuncting Neptune, which both again correspond typically with major changes in oil prices, but also with major pandemics like the Spanish flu, for example, of 1918. And for 2022, I specifically also, in addition to that period in April, I picked out time around August 1st, plus minus a few days, where again there's increased probability of an accident that could involve like an oil spill or something, or gas leak or chemical spill, and this may be either like industrial disaster along the lines of like maybe some chemical is spilled at a plant, for example, or it could be like a bad weather event where maybe strong waves capsize a ship, an oil tanker or something like that, and there may be an explosion, fire, and the ship breaks down into pieces and sinks, something like that. So definitely an even stronger kind of focus on oil and oil-related activities in 2022. But as I said, I did put out my best guesses for what might happen in terms of ups and downs for oil for 2021, and those are listed on my weekly predictions at austinka.com. So let's see. So this week overall, I think will be a relatively good week, and next week things look even more positive, especially for communication, transportation, businesses, especially those that are focused on long distance travel or long distance transportation. So until then, I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you guys later. Until then, bye.